Welcome to the Colorado Real Estate Podcast. Today we've got another guest, Craig Dorman.
Dorman.
Sorry, man.
It's all good.
We just talked about that and I screwed it up already.
Nickname was Doughboy, so it's Doughman.
So tell us a little bit about yourself.
I've been in real estate for almost 10 years. I'm a sports attorney, negotiating some fun contracts, recruiting guys from all over the country. That era of my career was Travel City. I was on planes. I was away from my family all the time. I don't know, 8-10 years ago, my boys started playing high school football. I decided to be a coach. I needed the flexibility to not have to travel because I wanted to be at practice after school every day. And then my boys went into college football, and that also put me in a position where I wanted to be able to make a majority of my income being home based here in Colorado Springs as opposed to living on airplanes.
So when you were, would that be like an agent or?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so when you were doing that as an agent for NFL players mostly?
All for NFL guys. I still represent coaches.
Okay.
And I still represent some college guys at NIL.
Okay.
And then just Saturday night, I went to dinner with my client that's with the Colts when they played the Broncos.
Okay.
So I still dabble in it. My boys My boys play professional football. And Johansson has got 3 credited seasons in the NFL. My son Brock played in Germany this last year, so they're still rocking. And then I have a daughter.
Okay.
That's like a healer and a yogi.
Oh yeah, we've talked about your daughter. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you went from that to, and then you were busy. You were flying all over the place, doing that thing, and then you decided to come back to Colorado and just do real estate. So now, as an attorney, do you have to do the same kind of education that the rest of us do, or can you go straight into real estate?
No, you still have to take the tests. The process is still the same. The only difference for me was I knew a lion's share of it, so I spent 2 weekends studying, took the test, called to find out when I could take the test. It was going to be like 3 or 4 weeks down the road. I was ready for it, so I looked up in Denver, and something like the next Tuesday. So I just went, took the test, passed the test, and got licensed.
So you hung your license, and then you got to work.
Went to work.
So you've been buying and selling real estate, for helping people do that for 10 years. Mm-hmm. Well, that's really cool. So you're doing a lot of, do you have a lot of connections from your previous job that really helped you with that, or did you have to kind of drum up new business?
I think everybody that gets in the business, you either get internet leads, Zillow, Realtor.com, et cetera, or you have a sphere, but then you go through an identity crisis because they see you as a sports agent, real estate agent. And then you've got, it's just one of those things where you work with people that will refer you in the business. And I was also able to refer my athlete clients to realtors in other cities when they were. So that's kind of how I started my business, and I didn't need to rely upon it financially because I was still making a lot of money from the sports world in the beginning, so there was no pressure. So it just kind of happened organically.
Okay. Yeah, kind of just built from your sphere. That's really, I'm finding for myself is my sphere has really been my best lead source. And so, but it is an identity crisis because I changed careers also. And so they saw me as the investment guy to now the real estate guy. But I'm having a blast doing it. So it's a lot of fun. So today's topic we're going to talk about is, what does my agent do anyway? So you've been doing this for a long time, 10 years, and you've moved a lot of property back and forth. So I kind of wanted to get into, like, what do your clients expect out of you? And then how busy do you get moving properties and showing properties? We don't just open doors as much as people think we do. That's just part of our job, a very, very tiny part of our job. So I'd like to talk about, like, what are you doing for your clients when you're from the signing of a buyer's agency or a listing agreement to closing?
That's a great question. I think that we could break this up into 3 parts: the investor client, the seller, and I'm just going to pick one. Let's just pick the buyer. So first thing I want to find out about a buyer is where they're at in the process. Are they a first-time home buyer? Are they a seasoned buyer that bought and sold multiple homes? Are they, like, financially strong? Are they on the bubble and they need some assistance? You're going to have a more limited avenue if they're on the bubble, because the financing is going to be important. Relationships are going to be important. Price range is going to be less, those type of things. And I feel like I'm a matchmaker because as a real estate agent, you wear different hats. So one of my hats is I'm a consultant. One of them is I'm a negotiator. One is I'm like an enforcer. I'm an advocate. And so you don't have to worry about negotiating when they still don't know what they're looking for. You don't have to be an advocate and they're still trying to figure out north side of town or east side of town. So it's really an exercise of getting to know what your clients are looking for, finding out what their expectations are, finding out where they're at in the process, seeing if they've already looked at homes with someone else, seeing if maybe if this is the first time they've ever looked in their life, or they've been dabbling in this like multiple times, but I've gotten cold feet and never pulled the trigger. And then you end up being a connector too, because most people, everybody knows 7 or 8 real estate agents. So that's just the way it works.
There's a lot of real.
You can throw a football and hit about 5 of them right here. But not everybody knows who the mortgage lenders are, who the brokers are. And so it's you act as a role of just because they might think they can. Right. And I don't want to waste my time or their time showing properties and mislead sellers in looking at properties. So that's what I call the beginning stage of like helping them carve out a niche with respect to their search, showing them some homes so I can find out what they like. A lot of times people say, hey, this is really important to me, whatever that is. After 3 houses, it's not important to me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's kind
of
of
the man says he wants a big backyard until he realizes he's got to buy a lawnmower and actually mow the grass or find some local kid. And so then they don't want the big yard. So it's really truth serum through the early process from the standpoint of they think this, and then it gets tested as they see properties. And then you have to be smart enough to go, you really do. That's the kitchen is the most important thing. Having a 3-car garage is really important. Whatever it is. And
so the home showing process really is an interviewing process as well.
It's a validation. You're trying to figure out what they told you. Is it still true? Because if it is, that's wonderful. It streamlines the process. But a lot of times the husband's telling you one thing, the wife's telling you another. And you got to have the wits about you to say, hey, why don't you guys talk it over? Get back to me once you figured it out.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you're spinning your wheels. They're spinning their wheels and you're spinning your.
Yeah. I have found that as well. Like we go look at a couple of houses, we have a conversation with the buyer, we figure out, okay, what do you really want? Now from here, now that we've actually seen what's out there, we're not window shopping anymore.
The other thing I would say is it's very important if you're thinking about getting into real estate and you're helping buyers is to help them set up a tour where they get to see multiple houses the same day.
Right.
So that they can really see the contrast between property A and property B. Where what a lot of people do is they get on Zillow and they like this home. Mm-hmm. They just want to go see this home. And then after they see it, they don't know how it compares.
I'd really like to drill down into this. This is because there's a lot of great tools out there that can compare homes or you look at all these pictures, but we pay really good money to these photographers to make these houses look fantastic.
Oh yeah. The rooms look bigger than they really are.
Yeah.
Everything looks great.
And it's not trying to be deceptive or anything. We're trying to show each house in its best light. I really think the best way to get out there to see homes, you could scan pictures all you want all day. Get in the house, look at the neighborhood, see the rooms, see how it feels. Is it loud? Is it quiet? Where how close are the neighbors and stuff like that. So I think it's super important that we rely a lot on the photography and on the online stuff. But when you're spending this kind of money on anything, you really need to be in it.
I always tell my clients that the pictures don't smell. You got to walk in the house to smell the house.
If only we could have scratch or sniff on our.
Yeah, it's like the most deceptive. It's not intentional, but the most deceptive aspect is the photos.
Right. That is true.
Because as a listing agent, your job is to showcase the property in its best light, make it look wonderful. So people that are in Alaska or wherever they may be, that are scrolling on properties looking in Colorado, they go, "Oh wow, this is the one."
Mm-hmm. They're the glamour shots, though. Yeah, they really are.
They are.
You got to get in. You got to take a look. I mean, because you could take a picture of a wall, but you're not going to see those little dents in the wall. You're not going to see the handprints. They're going to hide. It's not that they're being deceptive. It's just that's the glamour shot. That's where we're trying to draw you in with, and then we want to get you in the home. And so, as a buyer's agent, That's our job, is to drive around and know the area and know the properties and guide our clients. So yeah, that is a big part of our job, I think, is to really know the market and then find and connect, like you said, be a connector, connect the buyer with the right, not only the right property, the right area, the right location as far as distance from their work, how far they want to be from the freeway, the right school district, anything they want to be that they're looking for specifically.
Well, and that brings us to the point where now you've gone through this exercise or this experience with the buyers, and they go, this is and then they rely upon your market expertise on what should I offer. We're not supposed to tell them what to offer, but they want to know. So you show them some comps.
Yeah.
Once they make the decision they want it, you've got to be the person that is honest with them about, you know what? Is it a seller's market? Is it a buyer's market? What's going on in this particular part of the city? There's microeconomics in real estate. So what's going on south end of town may not be the same as the west or the east of the north.
Right.
And do you got to offer full price? Can you ask for seller concessions to help with closing costs? You've got to know, and you've got to have the gumption to be able to tell them, because if you're a coward because you don't think they'll proceed or whatever the case may be, you got to take your emotion out of it. You got to take your commission out of it. You got to serve your client in a way that, hey, you're working for free. You almost have to have the mindset, I'm not getting paid. I'm doing the best thing for this client. And if they truly want to get that property, you got to strategize and be honest with them. This is what you got to do to have an offer that the listing agent is going to recommend to the seller to accept.
I don't know if this is the way you feel, because it sounds like it is. The way I feel is I really enjoy helping people find a home that's perfect for them. And especially young couples who are starting out and it's their first home or their second home. I would do it free. I'm going to get paid out of it, but I would do it for free. I get my pleasure not from that check. That means almost nothing to me. What really I get the value from is saying is a couple or a single person, and they're like, I just did it. I bought a home, and they really can benefit from that in the long term. It's the single greatest wealth creation tool that we have, and that's one of the things that makes America such an amazing place, is that we have real estate, we can own it, and we can gain it, and it can create long-term wealth. So that's what I get really excited about real estate. And it sounds like, that's kind of your same philosophy.
Absolutely.
I do. Yeah, does it other.
No, I think one of the things that you said, Matt, is really good is you're trying to help the buyers find but a lot of times the perfect home is not how they thought. And then the other part of it is, especially when it's a seller's market, a lot of buyers get frustrated because they look at 40 homes. They find the one they want to pull the trigger on. They get the lender letter. They get pre-qualified, all those types of things, and they don't get it.
Yeah, then it wasn't the perfect home for them, unfortunately.
Well, they didn't come at it. They didn't bring enough ammunition to the party, so to speak. And I think that as an agent, you have to have a strong conscious awareness of how important this house that they want to make an offer on is. Mm-hmm. Is the one they're just taking a stab at? Is it the one that it's the only one for them? It's perfect for them. Yeah. Then you got to recommend a different strategy.
Yeah. If that's the only one, then they're falling, and they got to go heavy.
Got to go heavy.
Yeah. And I agree. I enjoy working with investors, sometimes because they're very light touched. They're going to give it a try. They'll drop an offer, give it a try, see what the market's doing. When my wife and I have bought property in the past, 20 years ago, we fell in love with the property. We went heavy, and our agent thought we were crazy. But we did not want to lose that house, so we went heavy, and we got the house. We lost money on the house in the end, but hey,
but you got it.
We got that house. We lived in that house for 8 years, and that was a great house. It's important to understand and set those expectations. I think as an agent and having those experiences is to say, okay, so this is what could happen. If it's a buyer's market and you go heavy on a property, you're probably going to lose money in the long term, but you'll get that property. Now we could try to see how it goes, and you still might lose the property. So it's all about gauging their level of commitment to that particular home. So sometimes they love a property and they got to have it. Well, it's going to cost. But if they can be a little bit more comfortable with some compromise, then they're going to be able to save money. And I think it's going to.
I think one of the things we have to do as agents is we have to let our buyers tell us, is this a forever home or not? Is this a 2-year home? Is this until our circumstances change home? Maybe our kids move out of the house, want to downsize, or the opposite. They're going to have a bucket load of kids. They need a bigger. It's really awesome if you can be a fortune teller, and none of us have a crystal ball. But if you can at least make an educated guess about the future. Because I've had clients where they bought the home, they got a divorce, they had to sell within a year.
Right, and that wasn't in the plan.
And they lost money.
Yeah.
And I've also had clients that have bought the home, bought right, in a couple of years needed military people moving on, and they put 6 figures of equity in their pockets. And so, not that we always can tell what's going to happen, but it's like if they're tight on money, it's not a forever home, and they may be like in a situation that can be perhaps selling it in the very near future. It's their money, but you want to advise them to be very cautious.
And their choice too. Yeah.
Choice.
If that was that situation, I would really highly advise them to try to get a deal, because if they don't get a deal, they're going to walk out away from that with either no money or not no money, but no, they're not going to make any equity.
They may be writing a check to get out of the house and closing on the back end.
Yeah, we're starting to see that with some houses that were sold in 23 now, and 24, if they want to get out of it, they're starting to lose some money. So that's really unfortunate. But that's just the way the market goes. It doesn't, it exploded, and it's probably going to take a while to chew up all those price gains. And I'm telling you, sellers still want those price gains, and it's just not happening right now. Slowly but surely.
I think I'm not an economist, but when the salaries catch up to the housing prices, then I think the housing prices can take off again.
I agree.
But as long as labor is not going up as fast as homes did, we're kind of in a holding pattern on the real estate side to let it catch up.
Yeah, our economy is so elastic, and it's so full of these different, you've got housing prices, they can quickly. Salaries always move slow. Profits can move quickly. But so, as these things itself around that. But housing prices are really core, I think, to the American experience. And so I think that you're right. When salaries start to come up, we're going to see prices move up. Maybe not as fast as they have in the past few years, but we're going to start to see some really good growth. And still, I still expect growth.
Well, one of the things one of our roles as an agent is to help the real estate clients understand really the fact that if you're on the sell side, you're not necessarily going to get the most money ever on your own. It might have been worth more last year,
right,
or the year before. And can you be comfortable with, let's say it's $1 million house 2 years ago, it's $880 today. It's $880 today. And so what happens a lot of times is real estate agents succumb to the pressure of the homeowner. Says, I really want $1 million for the house. Okay, I'll sell it to you I'll put it on the market for $1 million.
Yeah, I've had this conversation myself.
And they sell it for $750, and it's worth $880.
And then they feel like the agent lost them money.
Yeah, it was our fault.
Yep.
No, I think where our fault is when we don't tell the truth. We're not honest with them about the market. What's the economic supply demand, buyer seller market, that type of thing.
What's the time frame for that kind of in different price points have different.
Not everybody walking the street can afford a 7-figure home.
Right. Yeah, that's a big mortgage payment. And so you see a lot of buyers coming with cash at those prices. So yeah, it's an interesting. You have to really temper the expectations for what they expect, especially when they're selling. When it comes down to it, price is what somebody is willing to pay for it. That's what it's worth. And when the rubber hits the road, that's really what it's worth. And so if somebody's not willing to pay that 880 or that $1 million, then it's really not worth that. And that was a made up number in your head, unfortunately. And so that's a really rough way to say it. But
It's true.
People really need to understand that when we're trying to guide them through this process, we try to price it to what has been sold because that is what somebody was willing to pay. That gives us an idea of what it's worth. But it's really just an idea of what it's worth and what we think. It's not this is the price and you can pay that price or not. Well, you can sit on your house forever and never sell it. That's also the problem, which can cost everybody money and time.
I think one of the biggest challenges for agents on the sell side is, do we emphasize what other homes in the market are asking or what other homes in the market have sold? Those are two different numbers. And so a lot of times you get tricked into, just focusing on, hey, the neighbor is asking across the street's asking this. Well, if you ask that, you're going to be sitting on it for 6 months plus.
Right.
Because what's sold doesn't measure up to what that is.
Not only that, but some people get confused with what it was listed for and what it actually sold for. They say, okay, well, this house is listed for 1.1. Well, you don't know that house sold for $900,000 unless you actually look up the records. And so we really have to say, what are we selling for? Because a lot of these inflated prices, they're just not getting met. They're not finding buyers at those prices. And so the process is really frustrating for sellers,
right?
And buyers, because buyers aren't willing to pay. So they put an offer in, and they can't find, can't come to a consensus on price. So as an agent, I'd like to talk about, like, what are some of the behind the scenes that your clients don't really see you do? Talking about, like, we have checklists here. We go through hundreds of tasks. So can we talk a little bit about that? Like, let's start, since you're an attorney. So let's talk about the contracts. Now, you're not a real estate attorney, are you?
No. Here's what I would say is that there's a lot of behind the scenes work that agents do at every stage of the process. So when you're sharing market expertise to, regardless of whether they're on the buy side or sell side, you've had to do some due diligence to try to figure out what the heck that house is worth. You don't want to present an offer on behalf of one of your buyer clients without doing the due diligence of a neighborhood market analysis. You'd be almost committing malpractice because you might be offering 50 more than you should. And then on the sell side, it goes without saying that your value to the owner is being able to show them a range of what that property's worth. Most owners only see the big number. They don't see the range. So if you say, right, so
they see the top number.
So if it's 900 to $1 million, they only see $1 million. But and then the second part of the behind the scenes that due diligence that we do is talking to the other. So if you're in a listing situation, you should be talking to the other listing agents in the neighborhood and seeing what kind of activity they're getting. Has their seller turned down some offers? Have they had no showings? So that you can advise your client in an expert fashion, because you know what's going on in something you can't see in MLS, something you can't see in Zillow. And then I think the other thing that on the buyer side, the due diligence is in conversations you have with the listing agents to kind of find out, what are the seller motives? Are they in a panic situation? Are they patient?
Because there's a lot unsaid there.
A lot.
If you talk to the listing agent, I've had conversations with the listing agent where they sounded panicky and they were very careful about what they said, and they were really trying to solicit an offer. And in that situation, that tells me we're going to go in low. If a listing agent says, well, we've got another showing schedule, we got showing schedule out for the rest of the week. So if you're going to put an offer, go ahead, but we're not going to even look at them for like 4 days. So go ahead and give us a little extra time. Then that's a different tone. So there's a lot in reading what the listing agent says. That conversation is extremely important. I'm on my A game when I'm talking to the other agent.
Now you got to be very strategic in your conversations with the other agent, especially when you're on the buyer side, to find out if the swing set in the back's staying or going, if the extra refrigerator in the garage is staying or going, if there's some sentimental attachment between some feature, some appliance, something in the property and the seller, and that your people like it too, and it's going to end up being like a little bit of a tug of war,
right?
At least being heads up. Don't get blindsided about it. And then I think the other part of it is educating your clients every step of the way, helping them understand that when you make an offer, that the seller has 3 options every time. Sign it, now you're under contract. Make a counter, and now the power's back in your hands unless they get another offer that's better than the counter, and then the counter gets withdrawn, and you think you're going to get it for a little bit higher price because they want a little bit more, and you don't get it at all. Or they tell you to go pound sand by not responding. They don't even respond to your offer.
Do you ever recommend a non-response?
No, because as a listing agent, your job is to sell the property. You got to take all the emotion out of it. You got to take the politics out of it. You got to take the gamesmanship out of it. If you're representing a buyer and you make my client, my seller, a low offer, I'm not mad. The buyer can do whatever they want. You can represent them and they can do whatever they want. And my job is to go, hey, that's not going to, my clients, that's not in the range of acceptability to my clients. But and if my clients tell me this, I can, and give me permission, I'll say, hey, doesn't need to be at full price, but you got to give me something to work with here.
Yeah.
That way I'm soliciting another offer.
Yeah.
Okay. Because your buyers are obviously interested at some level or they wouldn't make an offer.
Right. And that interest is important.
That interest is important. Unless you've got 10 other people in line. But if you don't have 10 other interested parties, let's dance. I want to dance with you to see if we can maybe get under contract and have a mutuality of agreement that your people want to buy my people's property.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a couple strategies there. If you get a lowball offer and you're representing, and then let's say I got a lowball offer and my client said, no, I don't even want a counter. Well, I'd say, well, let's give a full price counter, or we can take a little bit off. Where are we willing to accept? Let's try to bring them back up. So I was like, I don't want to stop this conversation. And even if there's multiple coming in, possibility of multiple coming in, I'd like to have a conversation with these buyers so we can understand where's the market leading us, because that communication of an offer is a part of a conversation where the market is talking to us and we need to listen.
The other thing I would say, Matt, is that every seller, every owner that puts a property on the market never, ever wants it listed at the lowest price.
No.
I've never met that buyer or that seller yet.
Or that seller, or the lowest price that they're willing to accept.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
So my recommendation, if I get a really low offer, is let's make a counter at that, and I will communicate on your behalf to the buyer's agent that this is it.
That's it.
If you can't get there, then we're good. Just stay where we're at.
Then we'll end the conversation. But I think, there should be some back. I always recommend some back and forth. Let's have a conversation. Let's just not end it at hello.
Right.
Because sometimes hello can be rude, and they can feel rude and they can feel insulted. But let's take it at least a couple steps forward.
Okay, so it just popped in my mind that if I'm repping an owner seller on a listing, and you and your client make an offer that is lowballed, presentation to my client sets the stage.
Absolutely.
This is disgusting.
This is ridiculous. I cannot believe that.
Unbelievable.
I'm insulted myself.
That's not.
Well, that's not working. You're not doing your due diligence. That's not your fiduciary. You're going against your fiduciary, because your job is to get the house sold for them. And so so I agree. That's a delicate balance there. You have to like you said, take the emotion.
No, I just say, hey, for your client, the buyer, they may have another intended use for the property.
Right.
May not be as valuable as what the sellers think it should be, but that's what they think. And my job as the listing agent is to present it, say, you got three options.
Yep.
You can counter, you can go disappear, or you can accept it. And I'm not going to recommend that you accept it because it's not what you wanted, but let's talk about where you want to be in a counter.
I think that should always be the case. And the way we present that, if it's the first day it's been on the market, I'd say, let's give it a little bit more time. I said, but let's counter. But let's counter on with that in mind. So So negotiation that's not only negotiating the price, the terms, and the details of an offer, counter offer situation, anything. We're starting at the beginning of the deal. I think negotiating our client as well through that process, because for them, this is a big deal. Selling a house or buying a house is an enormous deal. And I think we do it so often now that it's what we do. Like if a surgeon goes in and does surgery, that's a big deal to that person getting surgery. But the surgeon, that's just another Monday. It's an important Monday, and they take it seriously. And like we would take our job seriously, but we have to remind ourselves there's a lot of emotions involved in this situation, and learn how to manage this. So that negotiating that emotion of our clients is extremely important.
I would say the biggest negotiation in a real estate deal for each real estate agent is their own client. It's not the deal. And I learned that a long time ago. I had a client negotiated a $43 million deal with the Cincinnati Bengals and worked my butt out a few more dollars.
Yeah.
And when I called him up and said, hey, man, we're done. I said, what do you think? He goes, can you get me more? And that was the magic 5 words I heard over and over.
Yeah.
And over again. Can you get me more? So what you have to do is you have to have conversation. If you're the listing agent, you have to have conversations with your client that there is a possibility you could get an offer that's higher than what you're asking. You could have multiple offers at the same time that creates leverage that gives us the ability to go back to the buyer agents and say, if you want to, we're not accepting your offer, but if you want to, give us your highest and best. And we're going to have a certain deadline. And maybe we get 2, maybe we get 3, and my client can pick the one they like the most. Okay. But you also could get an offer that is arguably insulting. It's less than what you're hoping for. And we need to have an understanding that we're going to read the market when we get it. And I'm not going to tell you what you should or shouldn't do today because I can't predict the future. But if you get 98% of what you were hoping for, it's not bad.
That's pretty darn good.
You know, I recently did a deal on the buyer side where it was well over a $900,000 property, and I figured out the percent of what they asked for. But the listing agent was a little upset because we weren't as close to the asking price as he was hoping.
So a 1.6% discount. You go to the store, you get a 1.6% discount. You don't even notice.
I know. But it's like when it's, yeah. So at the end of the day, you got to put it in perspective.
Right. And in 2, 3, and with, long-term housing growth prices, people do get tied up into those numbers, those dollars, especially big numbers. Like if it's, say, $750,000 and they get an offer for $699,000. Well, that sounds terrible. It's really not that far off. Or if it's, $1.5 million and they're getting an offer at $1.3 million, that's $200,000. If you take the $200,000 out and you say, okay, well, we're getting there. We're having a conversation. That's not crazy. We're not talking about a 30% discount. We are talking about a fairly big discount. And there could be worked out. And time has value too, for the buyer and the seller. Because when the seller, sometimes they need to move. Sometimes they've got time. And when they have time, great. You could let it sit on the market for 6 months and you can find the best buyer for that property. If they gotta go, then they gotta go. Then you're gonna have to. That's gonna reflect in the price too. And so it's always better with real estate in any long-term real estate holdings. Timing is everything. So I'm unwinding some commercial properties. That takes time. Unwinding commercial properties takes a long time, and you have to be patient. You have to set those expectations.
One thing you have to remind real estate owners about, unlike the stock you have in your Schwab account, you can put a sell it order in right now. In about 2 minutes, it's sold and it's settled the next day, and you can transfer. Real estate doesn't move that fast. Liquidity is not it's just not the same. You may not get that money for 9 months.
And that's actually, to my eyes, is a benefit. Because if that money is tied up, then it generally grows. And so the longer we hold on to something, I don't care what it is, it goes up in value. So it might not go up in value as much as we want, but not being able to just hit that sell button and dump keeps us from, imagine if we could sell houses that fast. The housing market would be crazy. The prices would be all over the place. One day that, some bad news came out, prices would go. The next day they'd be high and somebody would be making a ton of money and somebody would be losing. Oh my gosh, what a mess. I like that it's slow. I like real estate for the fact that it takes a long time. And I really try to communicate that to my clients is that, this is a long-term problem. Even if we end up being out of here in a year, which is really, I think the minimum you should hold. And I think that's even way too early to be selling real estate. I think 5 to 10 years should be the minimum that we look at for clients. 3 years if they're in the military, and they need to find the right place. So let's talk about market expertise. So when a buyer or seller, they hear I've got market expertise. What does that mean to you?
It's multifaceted because you like I shared before, there's microeconomics in every community. So in Colorado Springs, it's different in Monument.
Oh yeah.
Than it even is in downtown, North End, Rock Rimmon. You pick the place.
Falcon and everywhere.
So let's just take Rock Rimmon.
Yeah.
They can't build any more houses over there.
No, there's room.
There's no more room.
Yeah.
let's go out to Falcon. They go east all the way to Dodge City or wherever, right? So when, let's say, for example, you have a buyer that's looking for a property, they want to be on the west side.
Yep.
Go look at it and don't expect it to be perfect.
Don't dilly-dally.
Yeah, it wasn't built last week. It's going to be longer in the tooth and aged more than property in Stetson Hills. So I think it's not just the value. It's kind of like the flow of the geography. So different places have more options, more properties on the market. I don't know if we looked up on the MLS right now for Colorado Springs, I'll bet there's less than 10 properties between 5 and 6.
Oh yeah, right.
Maybe 5. So bottom line is, if you're from California, you're from Chicago, you're from out of state, you've got to educate them on, hey, this is kind of the reality of this market.
Yeah.
I think the other thing you have to do is, from a market analysis or market expert perspective, is the game. There's a game within the game, and the game within the game is when, let's say, for example, it's $1 million house, and in some cases you have to offer 20, 30 over to have a shot in a hot market. It's a seller's market. And then when the interest rates have been high and the market's been slower, you can go below asking price, and you also can get the seller, when you're on the buyer side, to, through seller concessions, pay for some of the closing costs, the prepaids, the lender programs.
I think that's a really key point. I think using the seller concessions as a negotiating tool, because a lot of buyers and sellers aren't really familiar with these terms.
They are.
And so as agents, we can introduce these to really benefit both sides. Yes, you're not going to get a full price offer with seller concessions in there, because the seller concessions are going to come off. It's going to have a selling price, and then it's going to come off of that. But it could really benefit the buyer, and it could actually benefit the seller, because they could offer those as an incentive. Say, I'm willing to do a rate buy down, especially in a high interest rate environment. We could do a rate buy down, and we could bring that monthly cost down for you and make it affordable.
There's been some cases recently where, without the seller concessions and the sellers helping the buyers with those upfront costs, lender costs, there wouldn't be a deal.
Oh yeah, especially with VA buyers. That's a huge factor here in Colorado Springs.
Absolutely.
I just helped a couple. We just closed on Friday or on Monday. I'm sorry, we just closed on Monday, and without seller concessions, that deal would not have happened. And they both sides really were happy. So it's not a bad thing from sellers. It's not a bad thing. It's not. It's just another tool that we have that we can understand how to use really carefully, especially in negotiating to get deals done.
I would say the second factor in market expertise is you're on the buyer side, and you've got a client that's interested in 2 properties, and they're almost like in that place where, like, they like both, and they could flip a coin. And one's built 7 years ago, so all the the furnace and the AC and the water heater and everything 7 years old. One's 1988. You need to do the due diligence on, hey, when was it permitted? When was the last time some of these major expenses were replaced? Because on its face, the buyer sees it as, I love this house, I live in this house. The prices are about the same. They're not the same after you move in.
No, they're not. The cost of that house will be
deferred maintenance can be a lot higher on one property compared to another. And if they don't have a lot of money in their pocket, you've just done a disservice by not sharing with them that, hey, this is probably going to happen right around the corner.
Not only that, but I think, the dates of being built are hugely important. The builders in the 80s, that was different than the builders in the 2000s. And I tell you what, some of the best houses in Colorado Springs I've seen are built in the 50s and 60s. Those houses, well maintained, are rock solid. They're quiet. They're put together really, really well. There's a lot of benefits to having the expertise of understanding, okay, when in this area were the best houses being built. And in early 2000s, there's some decent houses, but there's also been some problems because they got fancy and they made them big. And now we're starting to see some of those results come out. So understanding that is a huge facet of.
I would say there's a couple more aspects of it. One is, even a seasoned real estate person, they remember the experience more than they remember the details. So, like, hey, it went smooth. We got a good deal. We had great weather. That we did a radon test. They don't remember that they did a sewer scope. They don't remember some of those aspects of, oh my goodness, the roof was shot and you asked for the previous owner to file an insurance claim and put a new roof on it. So when you moved in it was totally brand new. And so people, and I do too, we all have kind of amnesia about all aspects of what we do. We only remember the emotional charged things. So you've got to be a great educator about, hey, these are the things we're going to do. We're going to check the rate on. It's more than 4.1 or whatever it is, parts per million. We're going to ask for them a mitigation system. Okay? Because that stuff is in the air. Lung cancer and other things like that. So the bottom line is being a market expert is also having the courage to speak the truth and share with your clients the pros and the cons, not just the pros,
right,
of proceeding with this particular property.
Some houses, like houses in the Black Forest, those insurance costs are really high because of the risk of forest fire. I love living in the trees, but I also pay a premium for insurance because it's expensive. Not only that, it's hard to get insured. So there's all kinds of things like that each area has. Rock rim in the ground moves. So there's problems there. And so there's every little, and there's bad storms down south and out east. You're looking at possibility of tornadoes and bad storms. And then there's no trees. So there's all this stuff. How
charges,
HOAs. Oh my gosh, the HOAs has been a huge thing lately because the HOA is struggling with their insurance costs and all the HOA fees are rising really fast. And so that's a huge part of it. And understanding, well, this HOA is reasonable and this HOA is not reasonable. Having that insight because you've done business in those neighborhoods before is there's always something. There's always something in a deal. I don't know about you, but there's always been something. So we use our market expertise. We help our client find the property. So let's talk about, and we negotiate a deal and we get that done. So now, our job is just really, that's only half of our job. So I kind of want to talk about what we do from contract to buy and sell being signed. So we're an execution part of the contract to closing, because there's some slow time in there, but it gets really busy really fast.
Well, when you're on the buyer side, you have an opportunity for a second negotiation because you go through the inspection process and make sure the property doesn't have any latent defects, things that none of us could see without an inspector coming and checking it out. I've never gone through a showing and spent hours and hours trying to do research on how old the furnace is, all these things. Mm-hmm. We just don't do it until we know for sure. But when they're under contract, now it's time to see who should share the cost, those types of major big ticket items, depending on the condition of them. So if the furnace is 35 years old, you better recommend to your client during the inspection, not just to get a general inspection, but to get an HVAC inspection. Mm-hmm. Make sure there's no CO leaks. There's none of all the major components of the furnace are working in good fashion. The other part of it is that I've been in situations where the lender, my buyer wasn't the best qualified buyer, and the lender's telling me 3 or 4 days before closing that we don't know if we're going to be able to close. Yeah. So I've had to communicate with my client about make sure you cross this T, dot this I. You've got to respond to the lender, because for the people that pay cash, it's really easy. They show up, they wire their money. They don't have to pay prepaids. So they don't have to deal with the lender. They don't have to sign too many documents.
Takes about 20 minutes. You're done.
But when there's a lender involved, they're trying to cover their butt. They become the most important party at the dance.
Yep.
And yes, the title company's there. You and I are there for the buy and sell side. Our clients are there, but the lender's the boss.
Yeah.
Because without the lender, unless the buyer's got the cash, the deal doesn't happen. So a lot of it is guiding and coaching your client through the lending process when needed. Helping them understand that if something comes up and they want to get out, what the deadlines are and for what reasons they can, go nuclear and hit the exit button, so to speak.
Yeah.
And then on the seller side, educate your clients that the buyer they can hit the
eject button.
They can do it.
Yep. At certain points, yeah.
So inspection and objection and inspection resolution proceedings and conversations are critical for both sides. Because if you kind of take a hardball approach as an agent, like if you're on the sell side, they shouldn't ask for anything. The house is wonderful. They're going to ask for something.
Yeah, they're always going to ask for something.
And then if you're on the buy side, you curb your client's expectations on the perfection of the property.
Right.
Knowing that, hey, it's normal. But these things are legitimate.
Yep.
These are health and safety. These are high ticket expenses. This is insurability. Let's ask them to fix it.
Yeah, safety, bring it up to code. Nothing crazy. Like I'm not going to ask them to repaint a wall. No. But let's bring things up to code. Let's safety if something's a safety issue. And then, I'd like to address that. And that pushing too hard on that can result in some problems. Because at that point, they've already fallen in love with the house. And do they want to lose the deal because they don't like the microwave? So there's a lot there that we have to measure and guide our clients through the inspection objections. I don't just go through the inspection report and cut and paste it and say we want everything fixed.
And you have to forewarn your client on the buyer side that report's going to be between 40 and 80 pages. So they're going to make the house look to be like it's fallen down.
Right.
And that you need to get all these other experts to come look at it, because all they can do is say, hey, it looks like it's a little bit, aged and it's outdated and its useful life may be coming to an end. And so the inspection reports and the inspectors can sometimes put buyers in panic unless you communicate to them, this is reasonable, this is normal, this isn't normal, depending on what it is.
And I like to have an inspector that's extremely thorough. And I don't like my buyers to talk to the inspector because then sometimes the inspectors can be a little alarmist. And so I like them to be the go-between because there needs to be some level of understanding of what the actual is. Now, the inspector is always going to talk to them because the buyer is paying the inspector. So they're working for them. So I'd like to be there to make sure that the conversation is going well so that we fully understand, okay, so we're not going to throw a deal for $100 problem with the door. And let's be reasonable about our expectations about how this house is certain years old. There's, if it's well maintained or not, we're going to find out, and then we're going to go from there. And I think there's just a minimum standard, and really that's code safety violations, which can be easily brought up. And it happens to all of our houses.
One of the biggest roles for agents is to be the interpreter. You're interpreting the inspection report for your client so that they understand these things really are on the serious side. These other things are no big deal. They're DIYs. They're your to-do list.
And that's our job, is by looking at so many properties, owning multiple properties. I mean, generally by our age, we've owned multiple properties and or investment properties, and understanding, how this process works. I think that brings a lot to the table to our clients. So when we get to closing, so now we've gotten past the negotiation of that second negotiation. Really, we're in the kind of getting into the home stretch where we're in the final communications with our lender, and we're kind of bringing it home from there. And then we're there to represent the buyer's interest or the seller's interest all the way up to closing. So, any key points that you want to touch on as far as what do you think is the most important part of your job that you really like your clients to understand?
I think that first and foremost, I want to eliminate the stress of the process. Buying a home, selling a home, moving is one of the most stressful things you do. That's why people don't do it every day. It would drive them crazy. People generally move every 5 to 7 years, unless you're in the military and it's every 2 to 3 years.
Yeah.
But really easing the stress of the process so it can be smooth. Helping them, setting expectations so there's no surprises. Surprises create stress. Circumstances don't create stress, because if they know that that's possible, it doesn't create stress.
Right. I think I saw something somewhere where if you know something's coming, that's not going to cause the amount of stress that if it's a surprise. So I think that's why we need to kind of tell the story of what's going on. What's going to happen in the next 30 days? This is the process. And then that way, when we hit those waypoints, it's not, oh my gosh, there's something wrong with the inspection. No, we anticipated this. Let's walk through it and then work the process.
Absolutely. So if you can eliminate stress, that's a big one. And the second one is communicating with your client as often as they need it and want it in a way that they want it. So it's a situation where I've had some clients that, hey, they're easy. They're comfortable in the process. They bought multiple homes. They want to know the major things. I've had other people that want to know everything. And I can go either way, but I'm not going to tell somebody that only wants to know the top line things. I'm not going to give them all the details, and vice versa. So I think communication channel is very important. I think another aspect of it is there's financial consequences on. So for example, if you're representing a seller and you haven't warned them that they live in a city where radon is pretty prevalent, and if the buyer's doing a radon inspection, you might be
Right. It's a possibility.
That's going to be more than $1,000, depending on the size of the home. It can be over $2,000 if it's a huge home. And so you let them know, hey, we don't know, but it's possible. So you're always one step ahead of your client. It's almost like you're going back to the Cowboys and Indians. You were like the advanced scout. You went on, you took your horse and you went to the top of the hill, and you were able to tell everybody, hey, it's coast is clear, or the enemies are, or hey, we've got X, Y, and Z in front of us. As a real estate agent, you always have to be a couple steps ahead of your clients, so that they are not blindsided.
I think that's key. I think that's what
We're Cowboys in.
That's right. I don't know. I might have to cut that one out. But yeah. All right. So, all right. This is good stuff. So I'm going to wrap it up here. I think this was a great. Just to wrap up, we were just talking about like what does your agent do? Right. The agent is there's a lot of pieces and components and experience that's required to be a really good real estate. So so we're going to just wrap it up here. I think we covered most everything. I think there's a lot of details we can get into about some specifics. That'd be time for another podcast. So this is Matt Mills, and this is Craig Dorman, and our contact information will be in the notes below. Thank you.
Thank you.